Zaltira was tired, really tired. She had been sitting at the communication console for 6 straight hours, sending the same message over and over. Her fingers hurt from pressing the buttons so many times. Her eyes burned from staring at the screen. "Please, someone answer," she whispered to no one. Around her, other Zephyrians worked frantically at their stations. Their planet was dying and everyone knew it. It had started slowly. First, the earthquakes became more frequent. Then the ground began to crack in strange patterns. Scientists said their planet's core was breaking apart. They had maybe 3 days before everything collapsed. 50 million Zephyrians lived on their world. That's a lot of people to save, and their ships could barely carry 100,000. They needed help. Desperate help. So Zaltira kept broadcasting, day and night. The same plea in 47 different languages. "This is Zephyria calling. Our planet is dying. We need evacuation assistance. Please respond." The first replies came from the Veltar Empire. Cold, official messages. "Your request violates our non-interference protocols. We cannot assist." The Shard Collective was even worse. They sent mathematical equations proving that helping was illogical and wasteful of resources. One by one, every major power said no. Too dangerous, too expensive. Not their problem. The worst response came from the hegemony. They didn't even say no. They just sent warships to surround Zephyria. Their admiral appeared on screen with dead eyes and spoke like he was reading a shopping list. "Your system is now quarantined. No ships may enter or leave. This measure protects other worlds from potential contamination." Contamination. That's what they called dying people. Zaltira wanted to scream. She wanted to throw her console against the wall. Instead, she kept working, kept trying. Someone had to answer. Someone had to care. In another part of space, Captain Park Jin stretched his legs on the bridge of Hope's Edge. It wasn't a fancy ship. The hull had scratches from 100 missions. Some panels still flickered from an electrical fire 2 years ago. But it was home. His communications officer, Petty Officer Lee Yan, suddenly sat up straight. She pressed her earpiece tighter and frowned. "Captain," she said, "I'm picking up a distress signal. It's heartbreaking, sir." Jin walked over to her station. The message was coming through in pieces broken by static, but the emotion came through clearly. Total desperation. "It's from something called Zephyria," Lee said. "Their planet is dying. They're begging for help." "How far?" Jin asked. 18 hours at full burn." Jin nodded slowly. "Chang course. We're going to help." Lee blinked. "Sir? Earth Command hasn't authorized." "Since when do we need permission to save people?" Jin said firmly. "Alert the crew. We're going to Zephyria." Chief Engineer Choi Min looked up from his console. "Sir, we're just an exploration ship. We can't evacuate 50 million people." Jin smiled grimly. "Then we'll find a way to do the impossible." Back on Zephyria, Zaltira was about to give up. Her shift was ending. Her replacement would take over soon, but she knew nothing would change. No one was coming. No one cared. Then her console beeped. A new message was coming in. Not on official channels. Just a simple transmission from deep space. "Zephyria, this is Captain Park Jin of the human vessel Hope's Edge. We heard your call for help. We're coming. Hold on." Zaltira stared at the screen. Humans? She barely knew what humans were. Some tiny species from a backwater planet, right? What could they possibly do? But they had answered. After days of silence, someone had actually answered. She stood up so fast her chair fell over. "Commander!" she called to her superior. "Someone's coming! The humans are coming!" Her commander, old Thekvar, shuffled over. His face had lost all hope days ago. He read the message and shook his head. One small ship? Against the hegemony blockade? He patted Zaltira's shoulder sadly. "Thank them for caring, child. But it won't matter." Zaltira looked at the message again. Such simple words. No calculations. No talk of policies or politics. Just, "We're coming." She didn't know much about humans. but something told her they were different. Maybe, just maybe, different was exactly what Zephyria needed. On the bridge of Hope's Edge, Captain Jin watched the stars blur by as they traveled through hyperspace. His crew was working overtime, preparing their ship for whatever they'd find. Dr. Seo Hee was converting storage bays into emergency medical units. "Jin," she called from down the corridor, "I need to know what we're facing. Radiation sickness? Injuries from natural disasters?" "Probably all of that and more," Jin replied. "Just do what you can, Doc." 17 hours later, sensors detected Zephyria. The planet looked beautiful from space, swirling blue and white clouds, green continents. It looked perfectly normal, but the instruments told a different story. Energy readings were off the charts. The planet's core was indeed failing. "Sir," Lee called out, "there's a massive hegemony fleet surrounding the planet. Over 200 ships." Jin didn't flinch. "Take us in anyway." As Hope's Edge dropped out of hyperspace, every hegemony ship turned their weapons toward them. A massive alien face appeared on the main screen. Admiral Vector of the hegemony, with cold silver eyes and skin like black metal. "Little human. Ship," the alien said with obvious amusement. "You are very lost. This system is quarantined." Jin stepped forward, hands behind his back. "We're here to help evacuate the Zephyrians." Vector laughed, a sound like grinding gears. "You? One tiny ship against our fleet? How adorably stupid. Leave now, or we will destroy you." Jin smiled, but his eyes were hard as steel. "No." Vector's amusement vanished. "What did you say?" "I said no. We're not leaving." The hegemony admiral leaned forward, his massive frame filling the screen. "You have 30 seconds to reconsider before we turn your ship into scrap metal." Jin looked at his crew. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes. This was suicide. Everyone knew it, but not one person suggested they run. "Open a channel to Earth Command," Jin ordered quietly. Lee nodded, her hands steady despite the fear. "Channel open, sir." Jin spoke clearly. "Earth Command, this is Captain Park Jin. We have encountered a humanitarian crisis at the Zephyria system. 50 million souls need immediate evacuation. I am requesting emergency backup. Authorization code. Omega Compassion." There was static for several seconds. Then a familiar voice came through. "Jin, this is Admiral Ko at Fleet Command. Did you just invoke Omega Compassion?" "Yes, sir." "For people we've never met? Against impossible odds?" "Yes, sir." A pause. Then, "Backup is on the way. All available ships are moving to your position. Hold that line, Captain." Vector's eyes had narrowed to slits. "What are you doing, human?" Jin turned back to the screen. "What we do best. We're showing up for people who need help." Within 2 hours, space around Zephyria filled with human ships. They weren't military vessels. Most were colony ships, cargo haulers, even passenger liners. Some had racing stripes, others had flowers, painted on their hulls. They came anyway. As the human fleet took position around Zephyria, the hegemony ships seemed less sure of themselves. Admiral Vector stared at the growing formation of ships. "You're all insane," he muttered. "Probably," Jin agreed. "But we're here, and we're not leaving until every Zephyrian is safe." In her communication center, Zaltira watched the impossible happen. Human ships were already moving toward the planet. She could see them adapting their vessels in real time. Cargo bays becoming passenger compartments, medical bays expanding, docking ports multiplying. They worked like they'd done this 1,000 times before. "How?" she whispered. Her commander, Thekvar, stood beside her. For the first time in days, his eyes held hope. "I don't know," he said softly. "But thank the stars for humans." Admiral Vector had seen many things in his 300 years of life. He'd watched entire civilizations fall, witnessed the birth of new stars, and conquered dozens of worlds for the hegemony. But he had never seen anything quite like this. The human fleet was chaotic. That was the only word for it. Where hegemony, ships flew in perfect formation. These humans scattered across space like seeds in the wind. Some flew upside down. Others spun slowly as they moved. It made his tactical mind itch. "Sir," his sensor officer reported, "I count 47 human vessels. Most appear to be civilian craft." Vectar studied the readings. These weren't warships. He saw cargo haulers, passenger liners, even what looked like a luxury yacht. One ship had a giant flower painted on its side. Another had racing stripes that made it look like a child's toy. "Pathetic," he muttered. "Do they think they can intimidate us with their vacation cruisers?" But something nagged at him. The humans had responded so quickly. So many ships in just a few hours. How? Captain Park Jin's voice crackled through the comm system. "Admiral Vectar, this is Captain Jin. We're here to evacuate the Zephyrians. You can either help us or get out of our way." Vectar's second-in-command, Colonel Kresh, snorted. "Shall I destroy them, Admiral? One targeting sweep would eliminate half their fleet." "Wait," Vectar said, holding up one clawed hand. He was curious now. "Let's see what these insects do." On the planet below, Zaltira watched her screens in amazement. The human ships moved like they were dancing, chaotic but somehow coordinated. As she watched, a massive cargo hauler opened its belly, revealing enormous, empty holds. "They're making space for us," she breathed. Another ship, painted bright yellow, was already extending docking tubes towards Zephiria's orbital stations. The movements looked impossible, too fast, too precise for such large vessels. Then she saw something that made her gasp. A sleek human vessel was attaching what looked like external pods to its hull. As she watched, more pods were sealed onto the ship's sides, top and bottom. "They're modifying their ships," she said to Tekvar. "Right here, right now," her commander nodded slowly. "In all my years, I've never seen anything like it." Engineer Choi Min was having the time of his life. While other species followed strict protocols for ship modifications, humans had always been flexible. He flew from ship to ship in his work pod, welding, connecting, and improvising at light speed. "Captain," he called over the comm to Jin, "I need 20 minutes per ship. We can triple each vessel's passenger capacity." "You've got 15 minutes, Jin replied. Choi Min grinned. "Even better. I work faster under pressure." Dr. Seo Hee was setting up her medical bay when she noticed something on the sensor readings. Radiation levels around the planet were getting worse. Much worse. She contacted Jin immediately. "Captain, the Zephyrians are already showing signs of severe radiation exposure. Some might not survive the transport." "Then we treat them here," Jin decided. "Convert whatever space you need, save as many as you can." "Sir, I'll need help. My team can't handle this alone." Within minutes, medical personnel from across the human fleet were boarding Hee's ship. Nurses, doctors, med students, even veterinarians. They came because they were needed. One young medic, barely out of training, looked overwhelmed. "Doctor, I've never treated aliens before." He smiled kindly. "Neither have I. But scared is scared. Pain is pain. We'll figure it out together." Admiral Vectar watched all this activity with growing confusion. His tactical computers couldn't make sense of the human formation. Their movements seemed random, yet somehow effective. "Sir," his sensor officer said hesitantly, "the humans are achieving a higher evacuation rate than our computers predicted possible." "That's impossible," Vectar snapped. "Their ships are inferior. Their formation is a mess." But the numbers didn't lie. Somehow, these chaotic humans were succeeding where others had failed. Colonel Kresh leaned over. "Perhaps we should warn them about the radiation storms approaching?" Vectar considered this. It went against protocol to help inferior species. But something about the humans intrigued him. "No," he finally said. "Let's see what they do." The first transport arrived at Zephiria's surface faster than anyone expected. It was a converted passenger liner called Star Dancer, painted in bright colors. As it descended through the atmosphere, the ship's pilot, a young woman named Pilot Jung Ai, spoke gently to her passengers. "Don't be afraid," she said in broken Zephyrian. "We're here to help." Zaltira was in the first group to board. She had expected military efficiency, cold metal corridors. Instead, she found herself in what looked like a traveling hotel. Soft lighting, comfortable seats, even art on the walls. Is this really a rescue ship? She asked. Young A nodded cheerfully. We converted her this morning. Added extra life support, medical facilities, even a kitchen. Figured you might be hungry. As more Zephyrians boarded, Zaltira noticed something beautiful. Humans weren't just following orders. They were improvising, caring, adjusting to each individual need. An elderly Zephyrian needed help walking. A human crew member stayed with him. A young Zephyrian was scared. A human medic sat beside her, making funny faces until she smiled. Up in orbit, other human ships were busy with their own modifications. The cargo hauler Big Bertha had turned its holds into temporary cities, complete with sleeping areas and sanitation facilities. The luxury yacht Sea Breeze was taking the youngest and most fragile Zephyrians, its comfortable passenger quarters perfect for those too sick to travel in standard conditions. Engineer Choi Min was working on Hope's Edge when he noticed something on his scanner. Captain, massive radiation storm approaching from the north. It'll hit in 45 minutes. Jin's voice came back immediately. Can we get everyone out in time? Not at our current rate, Choi admitted. Then something unexpected happened. Other human ships started changing their orbits, moving into positions Choi hadn't assigned. It was like they were reading his mind. What are you doing? He asked over the general comm. Forming a shadow pattern, came the reply from Captain Sue, Lin of the Wanderer. My ship can take the radiation hit while yours evacuates from the other side. That's not in the manual, Choi protested. Since when do we follow manuals? Another captain laughed. Admiral Vectar watched this exchange with growing amazement. These humans were coordinating without central command. How? Sir, his communications officer said. I'm monitoring their channels. They're not following any standard protocol, they're just talking to each other. Vectar leaned forward. The human ships moved like a school of fish, each responding to the other's movements without waiting for orders. It was chaotic. It was inefficient. It should have been a disaster, but it was working beautifully. They're communicating constantly, his officer continued. Not just orders, everything. Jokes, warnings, encouragement. It's like they're all connected. On the planet's surface, Dr. He was treating a young Zephyrian when the radiation storm hit. The planet shook, and everyone felt the wave of energy sweep across the land. That's not good, she muttered, checking her instruments. But then she heard something that made her smile. From orbit, Captain Jin's voice. All ships' storm protocols are now in effect. Let's get our people home. The human fleet moved as one. Ships that had been in the path of the radiation flew to safe positions. Others moved in to take their place. No one was abandoned. No one was forgotten. As the storm passed, Zaltira found herself aboard Hope's Edge, watching the activity through a porthole. Human crew members rushed past carrying supplies, helping injured Zephyrians, fixing whatever needed fixing. She noticed something that amazed her. They were singing. Not all together, different songs, different languages. But somehow, it made the whole ship feel alive, feel hopeful. A young human engineer paused beside her. First time in space with humans, he asked kindly. Zaltira nodded. It's different than I expected. He smiled. We're not the strongest or the smartest species out there, but we show up when people need help. That's got to count for something, right? As if to prove his point, alarms suddenly rang throughout the ship. Another radiation storm was approaching, bigger than the first one. Zaltira expected panic. Instead, she watched in amazement as the human crew simply got to work. No shouting, no fear, just quiet determination. Storm's coming, Captain Jin announced calmly. All hands, let's get ready to dance with the radiation. We've got people to save. And they did. The alarms kept getting louder. Captain Park Jin stared at the readings on his screen and his heart sank. The planet's core was collapsing faster than anyone had predicted. They had maybe 6 hours before Zephyria exploded completely. Status report, he called out. Chief Engineer Choi Min wiped sweat from his forehead. We've evacuated 30 million Zephyrians, Captain, but there are still 20 million down there. How many ships do we have operational? 42. But sir, Choi's voice trailed off. What is it? The radiation storms are getting worse. My instruments show deadly levels across the entire southern continent. Any ship that tries to land there won't make it back up. Jin closed his eyes for a moment. 20 million people. 20 million innocent lives waiting for rescue that might never come. On the planet below, Zaltira had returned to help coordinate the final evacuations. Her communication center was chaos. Zephyrians were crying, screaming, some just staring at the walls in shock. The humans can't reach us, someone shouted. The storms are too strong. But Zaltira noticed something. Even as panic spread among her people, the human voices on the comm remained calm. This is Pilot Young A in Sector 7. Storm's too thick here, switching to Sector 9. Copy that, Young A. Captain Yu, can you cover Sector 7? Already on my way. They didn't give up. Even when it seemed impossible, they kept trying. Doctor, Co Hee was treating the worst radiation cases when Commander Kim Woo arrived at her medical bay. He looked grim. Doc, I need to talk to you privately. They stepped into a quiet corner. Kim's face was pale. The planet's core is going critical, he said quietly. Our scientists ran the numbers. To stabilize it enough for the final evacuation, someone would need to go down there, manually adjust the quantum containment field. And? It's a one-way trip. The radiation levels would kill anyone within minutes. He stared at him. You're talking about a suicide mission. I am. And I'm going to volunteer. Before he could respond, Kim turned and walked to the ship's announcement. System. All hands, this is Commander Kim Woo. I need volunteers for a special mission. It's dangerous. Actually, it's worse than dangerous. Anyone who goes probably won't come back, but if we don't do this, 20 million people are going to die. The silence that followed felt like forever. Then, one by one, crew members started, showing up at the bridge. First came Engineer Park Sun, barely 22 years old. I'm in, sir, then Technician Moon Ho. Someone needs to fix things, might as well be me. Communications Specialist. Dana joined them. If we're going down there, you'll need someone to talk to the surface. Within 10 minutes, Jin counted 47 volunteers, nearly half his crew. This is insane, he muttered. Engineer Choi grinned sadly. Captain, you've been with humans. Long enough to know, we specialize in insane. Admiral Vektar of the Hegemony had been watching the human evacuation efforts with growing confusion. Now he was witnessing something that defied all logic. Sir, his sensor officer reported, the humans are planning to enter the planet's core. Our computers show it's suicide. I know, but they're doing it anyway? Vektar nodded slowly. It appears so. Colonel Kresh shook his head. These creatures make no sense. Why would they die for aliens they barely know? Before Vektar could answer, his communications officer interrupted. Sir, we're receiving a message from the humans. It's addressed to you personally. Put it through. Captain Jin's image appeared on the screen. He looked tired but determined. Admiral Vektar, this is Captain Jin. I know we haven't exactly been friendly, but I want you to know something. When we go down to that planet's core, we're not doing it to be heroes. We're doing it because it's right. Vektar said nothing. If we don't make it, Jin continued, I'm asking you to protect the evacuation ships until they reach safety. I know it's not your policy, but maybe you could make an exception. Just this once. The transmission ended. Vektar stared at the blank screen. Sir? Kresh asked. Your orders? Give me a moment to think. Down on Zephyria, the final evacuation ships were loading. The ground shook constantly now. Cracks appeared in buildings, and the air tasted of electricity and fear. Zaltira helped an elderly Zephyrian onto a transport when she heard familiar voices. The human volunteer team was landing nearby. She ran to them as they prepared their equipment. Commander Kim looked up as she approached. You don't Have to do this, she said desperately. Kim smiled sadly. Actually, we do. It's what we do. But why? You barely know us, young engineer Park answered her. Doesn't matter. You're people. You're in trouble. That's enough. The team began their descent toward the planet's core. Their ship, a small craft, barely big enough for 20 people, disappeared into the swirling storms below. Back in space, the evacuation continued. But everyone knew time was running out. Pilot Jung-ai was on her 8th trip when her ship started falling apart. The radiation had eaten through her shielding. Her engines were failing. Stardancer to Fleet Command. She radioed calmly. I'm going. Down. But I've got 300 Zephyrians aboard. Jung-ai, try to make it to orbit, Captain Jin pleaded. Can't do it, sir, but I can get them to the emergency shuttles. As her ship plummeted toward the planet, Jung-ai worked frantically to load Zephyrians into escape pods. One by one, the pods launched toward waiting human ships above. The last pod launched just as Stardancer hit the ground. Jung-ai's final transmission was simple. All passengers safely away. Tell my family. Tell them I did good. Silence filled the comm channels for several seconds. Then Captain Jin spoke, his voice heavy with emotion. Jung-ai did more than good. She did what humans do. She saved lives. Deep beneath Zephyr's surface, Commander Kim's team reached the planet's core. The sight that greeted them was terrifying, a swirling mass of energy barely contained by failing machinery. Radiation levels are off the charts, reported Technician Moon, her voice crackling through the interference. How long do we have? Kim asked. Engineer Park checked his instruments. Maybe 20 minutes before our suits fail. Then we better work fast. They spread out, each team member taking a different section of the containment field. The work was dangerous, requiring precise adjustments while the planet shook around them. First stabilizer locked, Park called out. Second one's fighting. Me, Moon replied through gritted teeth. Take your time, Kim said, though they all knew time was something they didn't have. On the surface, the final evacuation ships prepared to depart. Only a few thousand Zephyrians remained boarding the last transport. Zaltira was supposed to be on it. Instead, she stood at the launch pad, looking up at the storm-filled sky. What are you doing? Tekvar asked her. You need to board now. I can't leave, she said. Not while the humans are down there. I'm the one who sent the distress call. This all started with me. They chose to help. That's not your fault. It's not about fault, Zaltira replied. It's about not leaving anyone behind. Isn't that what the humans taught us? High above, Admiral Vektar made a decision that would haunt him. Or perhaps, he thought later, save his soul. All ships, he commanded, take defensive positions around the human evacuation fleet. Sir? Colonel Kresh asked in surprise. You heard me. If these humans want to die trying to save strangers, the least we can do is protect their efforts. Some of his officers looked confused. Others nodded in agreement. In the back of his mind, Vektar wondered if the humans were teaching them something about honor they'd forgotten long ago. In the planet's core, the human team was running out of time. Half their number had already collapsed from radiation poisoning. But they kept working. Third stabilizer. Locked, gasped Engineer Park. I've got the fourth, Moon wheezed. But I can't hold it much longer. Commander Kim looked around at his team. These brave souls who had volunteered to die for strangers. His voice was steady when he spoke. You're the finest people I've ever known. Every one of you. No matter what happens, remember that. He reached for the final control, knowing it would cost him everything. For the Zephyrians, he whispered. For the Zephyrians, the others echoed. As Kim activated the last stabilizer, the containment field pulsed. With new energy, the planet's death screams quieted for just a moment. Above, the final transport lifted off with Zaltira aboard. She pressed her face to the porthole, watching her dying world shrink below. The stabilizers held. Kim's team had bought them time, bought with their lives, but they'd succeeded. Every single Zephyrian had been saved. As the planet finally exploded in a burst of light and fury, the combined human and hegemony fleets watched in silence. 20 million refugees. Every single one alive. The humans had done the impossible. Again. The planet's core chamber was like something from a nightmare. Commander Kim Woo and his team stood in a vast cavern filled with machines that hummed with deadly energy. The walls pulsed with orange light and the air tasted of metal and lightning. Temperature is 180 degrees, reported Engineer Park Sun, checking his suit's readings, and rising fast. Radiation levels are 60 times lethal, added Technician Moon Ho. Her voice was steady, but Kim could hear the fear underneath. Kim looked at his team, 20 brave souls who had volunteered to die so others could live. They stood quietly waiting for orders. No panic, no regret. Just humans being human. Remember, he said, we need to hold the stabilizers for at least 4 minutes. That's how long it takes for the last ships to clear the atmosphere. Communications specialist. O'Dana nodded. I've got a direct line to the surface. As soon as the last transport launches, I'll let you know. They spread out through the chamber. Each person had a section to control. The machinery was alien, complex, and partially broken. But the humans had studied it during their descent. They would make it work. Up on the surface, chaos ruled. The ground cracked open in long zigzag lines. Buildings toppled. The sky burned orange as the planet's death throes began. Zaltira helped load the last group of children onto the final transport. They were so small, so scared. One little girl clung to her fur, crying. It's okay, Zaltira whispered. The humans are here. They'll save us. But she wondered if she was lying. Pilot Jung-Ae's ship had crashed hours ago. She'd saved her 300 passengers but hadn't made it herself. Now, other pilots were pushing their luck, landing in the worst radiation zones to pick up stragglers. Captain Yoon Bin brought his ship down in what used to be Zephiria's capital. The city was collapsing, but he could see movement in the ruins. Come on, he called to his crew. We've got people trapped. They ran through falling debris, their radiation suits beeping warnings. In a collapsed school, they found 40 young Zephirians hiding in a basement. We're here to help, Yoon said gently, even though the kids couldn't understand him. One by one, they carried the children to safety. Yoon's engineer, Specialist Nam Soo, noticed his suit's power failing. Sir, I'm running out of juice, she said. Can you make it to the ship? Nam looked at the kids still waiting. I'll make it. She didn't. Her suit failed 20 meters from the transport. But all the children made it aboard. In the core chamber, the stabilizers were fighting them. The machines screamed as Kim's team tried to keep them running. Sparks flew. The heat was unbearable. First stabilizer is locked, Park shouted over the noise. Blood ran from his nose. The radiation was eating him alive. Second one's fighting me, Moon yelled back. Her hands shook as she worked the controls. Kim watched. His people dying. Each second ticked by like a hammer blow, but they held on. Above them, the last transport finally lifted off. Zaltira was aboard, watching through a porthole as her world died. She saw human ships everywhere, racing to get clear. That's it, Dana called out in the core chamber. All transports are away. Kim felt a moment of pure joy. They'd done it. Every Zephirian was safe. But the mission wasn't over. The stabilizers needed to hold a bit longer, or the planet's explosion would catch the fleeing ships. Stay with me, Kim commanded. Just a little more. Park collapsed at his station. Moon followed seconds later. One by one, the human volunteers fell, but others took their places. Engineer Kang Min crawled to Moon's position as she passed out. I've got it, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Radio specialist Bei Jung replaced Park even as his own suit alarm screamed. Stabilizer 2 is locked. This was humanity at its finest. Not the strongest or smartest species in the galaxy, just people who refused to give up when others needed help. In space, Admiral Vector watched the human fleet streaming away from Zephyria. His own ships formed a protective corridor around them. Sir, his sensor officer said, the human volunteers in the core, they're still there. Vector nodded grimly. I know. Should we say something? For 300 Years Vectar had followed hegemony protocol. Keep emotions out of war, don't get attached, stay logical. But watching the humans die for strangers had changed something in him. Open a channel to the core team. Sir? Do it. The channel opened. Kim's voice came through, weak but clear. This is Commander Kim. All transports are clear. Beginning final sequence. Vectar cleared his throat. Commander, this is Admiral Vectar of the Hegemony Fleet. Silence. Then Kim replied, Admiral, didn't expect to hear from you. I wanted to say your people have shown courage beyond measure. The galaxy will remember what you did here. Kim laughed, a painful sound. Just humans being human, Admiral. Take care of our people up there. I will. I give you my word. In the core chamber, Kim looked around at his team. Most were unconscious now. Those still awake smiled at him through blood and tears. Time to go home, Kim said softly. He reached for the final control. The stabilizers would overload in 30 seconds. That would be enough time for the evacuation fleet to reach minimum safe distance, but not enough time for his team to escape. Kim pressed the button. The planet's core pulsed with stored energy. Every stabilizer locked into place. The Zephiria's death was contained for crucial seconds. As Kim's team died, their last thoughts weren't of regret. They thought of the 50 million Zephirians flying to safety, of children who would grow up, of families who would stay together. That was their final gift. The explosion, when it came, lit up half the solar system. Zephyria became a brief star, burning bright and beautiful. But every single Zephirian lived to see it. Aboard the lead refugee ship, Zaltira watched the light fade. Beside her, old Thekvar wept. They saved us all, he whispered. Every single one of us. Captain Park Jin stood on the bridge of Hope's Edge, staring at the empty space where Zephyria had been. His communications officer, Li Yian, approached carefully. Sir, message from Earth Command. They want a full report. Jin nodded slowly. What do I tell them? That we lost good people? That 50 million aliens are alive because humans refuse to give up? Tell them the truth, sir. Tell them what humans do. Jin smiled sadly. That we show up, no matter the cost. Hours later, the combined fleet held a memorial service. Humans, Zephirians, and even some hegemony officers attended. They shared stories about the volunteers who died in the core. Commander Kim, who told jokes even when he was scared. Engineer Park, who worked on broken equipment until his last breath. Pilot Jung Ai, who saved 300 lives with her final flight. Each name was a gift. Each story a reminder that in a cold universe there were still people who cared. Admiral Vectar found himself standing next to Captain Jin during the service. Your people, Vectar said quietly. They're not like other species, Jin nodded. No, we're not. They changed something in me, watching them sacrifice everything for strangers. It made me remember why I became a soldier in the first place. To protect people. Yes. Though I'd forgotten that for a long time. They stood in silence, watching as human and Zephirian children placed flowers in space on a memorial for those who died saving them. Where will your refugees go? Vectar asked. Earth has offered them colonies, other human worlds too. We'll take care of them. Vectar nodded. If they need anything, supplies, medical equipment, protection, my fleet will assist. Jin looked at the alien admiral in surprise. That's very generous. It's what your people would do. As the memorial ended, a message came through from Earth. Zaltira had requested to speak to the entire fleet. Her image appeared on screens throughout the human and hegemony ships. She looked older somehow, worn by loss but strengthened by hope. I am the one who sent the distress call, she began. I begged the galaxy for help. Only humans answered. She paused, looking directly into the camera. You didn't know us. You owed us nothing. Yet you came. You fought impossible odds. You died for us. Her voice broke slightly. I promise you this, The children you saved will know your names. Their children will know your names. As long as Zephyrians exist, we will remember that when the universe was dark and cold, humans brought light. She reached off camera and lifted a small bundle. I carry with me a piece of Zephyria, soil from our homeland. We will plant it on our new world, and there we will build a garden where your heroes are honored forever. The transmission ended. Across the fleet there wasn't a dry eye to be found. Captain Jin walked to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Li Yan joined him. "Do you think they'll remember?" she asked. "Really remember, I mean." Jin smiled. "I think they will. And I think those memories will spread. Other species will hear about what happened here. And maybe they'll remember that the most powerful weapon in the universe isn't a gun or a bomb. It's compassion." As the human fleet prepared to escort the Zephyrian refugees to their new homes, a message arrived from the Galactic Council. Admiral Vectar shared it with Captain Jin. "They're calling for a formal inquiry," Vectar said. "About what happened here," Jin laughed. "Let them investigate. Maybe they'll learn something." "What will you tell them?" "The truth. That we're human. That we show up when people call for help. That we don't calculate odds when lives are at stake." Vectar smiled, the first genuine smile on his face in centuries. "Then I'll tell them the same thing." Word for word, the Zephyrian refugee fleet began its journey to new homes. Behind them, the space where their planet had been slowly cooled from white-hot to merely glowing. But the memory of what happened there would burn bright forever. In the years that followed, the story spread. Not just among Zephyrians or humans, but to every corner of the galaxy. The tale of a desperate plea that only humans answered, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Other species began to change, some in small ways, others dramatically. The cold equations that governed galactic politics began to warm, all because humans refused to listen when the universe said it was impossible. They listened instead to something deeper. The call of one person asking another for help, and they answered. 5 years had passed since Zephyria died, and the galaxy was different now. The changes started small, like ripples on a pond, but they kept growing. Zaltira stood in the Galactic Council chambers, her diplomatic uniform crisp and new. She was Earth's first non-human ambassador, a title that still made her nervous. Around her, representatives from hundreds of species sat in their assigned seats. They were listening to her today, all of them. 5 years ago, she began, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. My people sent a distress call. 50 million souls faced extinction. We begged for help. She touched the small pendant around her neck, a piece of Zephyrian soil mixed with earth from Commander Kim's hometown. The mighty Veltar Empire calculated our worth and found us lacking. The Shard Collective ran probability equations that deemed our survival statistically irrelevant. The Nexus machines decided helping us had only a 0.3% chance of success. Uncomfortable, shifting filled the room. Several delegates looked away. Only humans answered, not because it was profitable, not because it was logical, but because we asked for help. Near the back of the chamber, Captain Park Jin watched with pride. He wore the uniform of Admiral now, but he preferred his old captain's jacket. It reminded him of when things were simpler. The humans came with civilian ships. Zaltira continued. Cargo haulers, luxury yachts. One ship had flowers painted on its hull. Another had racing stripes like a child's toy. Some species scoffed at this, but others leaned forward, interested. They didn't come to conquer or claim territory. They came to save lives, and when the situation became impossible, when the planet's core failed and radiation storms made rescue seem hopeless, they didn't retreat. She paused, letting the silence build. 20 humans volunteered for a suicide mission. They went into our planet's core knowing they would die. Commander Kim Woo and his team gave their lives so 50 million strangers could live. The Veltar delegate, General Vorthak, stood suddenly. This changes nothing. We cannot base Galactic's policy on emotional. He was interrupted by something unexpected. Admiral Vektar rose from the hegemony section. "Sit down, Vorthok," Vektar said calmly. "The ambassador isn't finished." Murmurs swept the chamber. Vektar was known as the hegemony's coldest strategist, yet here he was, defending a human position. Zaltira nodded gratefully. "The humans taught us that strength isn't measured in weapons or warships. It's measured in how far you'll go to help someone who can't help themselves." On the observation deck, Dr. Siohi smiled. She ran the New Zephyria Medical Center, now training both human and alien doctors. Her patients came from dozens of species, all learning from the human approach to medicine. Treat the person, not just the disease. "Today," Zaltira announced, "we're not just talking about the past. We're here to discuss the future. Specifically, the Galactic Mutual Aid Treaty." The chamber erupted in voices. The treaty had been controversial from the start. It required all member species to provide aid during humanitarian crises, regardless of politics or profit. Many species opposed it. They called it the human doctrine with obvious distaste. "This treaty," declared the Shard representative, "is economically unsound. Emotional decision-making leads to inefficiency." "Everything shouldn't be about money," replied the delegate from New Harmony, a former Zephyrian colony. "Life has value, beyond economic calculations." Admiral Vektar stood again. His presence commanded attention. "I opposed this treaty for 2 years," he said. "I called it foolish, reckless, against all strategic thinking." He paused, looking directly at the human delegation. "I was wrong. The humans showed me something at Zephyria that changed how I see the galaxy. They proved that sometimes the most strategic thing you can do is simply care." Gasps filled the chamber. Vektar was admitting he was wrong? Publicly. "The hegemony will vote yes on this treaty, not because it's profitable, but because it's right." Suddenly, other species began standing. The delegates from Kepler Colony, former refugees saved by human ships, representatives from the Outer Rim worlds, protected from pirates by human, patrols that asked nothing in return. Even some members of the powerful trade alliance stood. Their businessman delegate spoke with emotion. "The humans saved my nephew during the Rigel Station disaster. They asked for no payment, no trade agreements. They just saved him because he needed saving." One by one, votes were cast. The treaty passed by the largest margin in Galactic Council history. As delegates filed out, Zaltira felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find Admiral Jin, her old friend from that desperate day. "Proud of you," he said simply. "The treaties, just words on paper," she replied. "Making it real is harder." Jin smiled. "Then we better get to work." 3 months later, the first test came. The ice world of Theta Frost was struck by massive volcanic eruptions. Poisonous gases filled the atmosphere. 30 million inhabitants faced slow death. The distress call went out at midnight Galactic Standard Time. By morning, over 300 ships were en route. Not just humans this time, but hegemony cruisers, Veltar hospital ships, even the normally isolationist crystal weavers sent aid. Zaltira coordinated the response from her Earth office. Through her window, she could see the memorial garden where Zephyrian soil mixed with Earth plants. Young Zephyrians played beside human children, laughing in the afternoon sun. Her communicator chirped. A message from the evacuation fleet. All Theta Frost inhabitants successfully relocated. 0 casualties, operation complete. She smiled, remembering another evacuation 5 years ago. But this time, no one had to die. Because the galaxy had learned. Captain Yu Min commanded the lead evacuation ship, a vessel jointly built by humans and Zephyrians. Her crew was mixed too. Humans, hegemony officers, even some former pirates who'd turned respectable. "Ma'am," her navigator reported, "we're getting another distress call. The mining station at Beta 7. Yu nodded. "Set course. Maximum speed." "Should we wait for authorization?" Yu looked at the young officer like he'd grown a second head. "Since when do we need authorization to save lives?" The officer grinned. "Sorry, ma'am, old habits." Back on Earth, Admiral Jin reviewed fleet reports. Human ships were everywhere now, not conquering, but helping, protecting trade routes, providing disaster relief, teaching other species that there was another way. His aide, Commander Li Yan, brought him coffee. She'd stayed by his side through everything. Admiral, the President wants to know about military spending. Senator Williams says we're spread too thin. Jin sipped his coffee thoughtfully. Tell the Senator something. When Commander Kim died saving Zephyrians, he didn't check his budget first. He just did what was right. And if the Senator doesn't like that answer, then remind him that we're humans. Helping others isn't something we do with our spare time. It's who we are. On New Zephyria, children grew up learning 2 languages, their own and human standard. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. In schools, teachers told the story of the Great Rescue, how humans came when no one else would, how they gave their lives for strangers. Young Keltar raised his hand. Why did they do it? The humans didn't even know us. His teacher, an elderly Zephyrian named Tekvar, smiled. The same Tekvar who'd given up hope until humans arrived. Because, little one, knowing someone isn't required for kindness. The humans taught us that we're all connected. Your pain is my pain. Your joy is my joy. Another child asked, Will I ever meet a human? Oh yes, Tekvar promised. And when you do, you'll understand why they're special. They see a person in trouble and they can't just walk away. Meanwhile, in the deepest parts of space, human ships continued their patrols. They'd found something that surprised everyone. Pirates were becoming less of a problem. It's weird, reported Captain Kim, Sue from the frontier patrol ship Horizon. We keep finding pirate bases that have turned into refugee centers. His executive officer looked puzzled. Pirates helping people? Apparently, seeing humans risk everything for strangers made some of them reconsider their life choices. It was true. Former pirates were opening their asteroid bases to refugees. Some even joined rescue operations. The famous pirate captain known as Black Nova now ran humanitarian missions to the Galactic Rim. The changes kept spreading. The Veltar Empire, once rigid in their non-interference policy, quietly began sending medical supplies to troubled worlds. They called it diplomatic aid to save face, but everyone knew better. The Crystal Weavers, who'd hidden in their nebula for centuries, emerged to share their knowledge of environmental restoration. Even the machine minds of the Nexus began calculating the value of compassion. Their latest analysis concluded, happiness and peace have measurable benefits to galactic stability. The human approach yields superior long-term results. 10 years after Zephyria, Zaltira gave her final speech as ambassador. She was retiring to become a teacher, wanting to pass the human lessons to new generations. When I was young, she told the packed auditorium, I thought strength meant being the biggest, the fastest, the smartest. Then I watched humans fly into certain death to save my people. The audience, humans, Zephyrians, hegemony officers, even former pirates, listened in respectful silence. The humans weren't the strongest. Their ships weren't the fastest. They certainly weren't the smartest. Only humans would think racing toward an exploding planet was a good idea. Laughter rippled through the crowd. But they had something no amount of calculating could match. They cared. They showed up. They refused to give up. She held up a small seed, a hybrid plant that grew on New Zephyria, created from human and Zephyrian genetics. This little seed contains both our worlds. It only grows when different species work together, just like the galaxy we're building. As she finished her speech, something unexpected happened. A young Veltar in the audience stood and started clapping. Then a hegemony cadet joined in. Soon the entire auditorium was on its feet, applauding. Not just for Zaltira, for the future they were building together. Admiral Jin, now gray-haired but still determined, watched from the back. Beside him stood Admiral Vektar, his former enemy who'd become one of his closest friends. Think it'll stick? Jin asked quietly. This new galaxy we're making? Vektar smiled, an expression that came easier now. The young ones get it. They're growing up thinking it's normal to help strangers, to risk everything for others. Good, Jin nodded. That's how it should be. As the crowd dispersed, a small group remained, the memorial committee for those lost at Zephyria. They met each year to plan new ways to honor the dead. This year was special. They were dedicating the completed Memorial Academy, a school where young beings from across the galaxy would learn not just science and math, but compassion and courage. The Academy's motto, carved in stone above the entrance, was simple. Answer the call. Underneath, smaller text in dozens of languages added, because that's what humans do, and we are all human now. Captain Park Jin's great-granddaughter, barely 5 years old, tugged on his uniform jacket. Grandpa Jin, she asked in the way children do, tell me again about the Great Rescue. Jin picked her up, pointing to the memorial wall where 20 names were etched in space-black stone. Once upon a time, he began, people were in trouble and no one would help them, except us, because we humans have a rule. When someone needs help, you help them, no matter what. Even if it's scary, especially if it's scary. The little girl nodded seriously. I want to help people too, Grandpa. I know you will, sweetheart. It's in your human nature. As the sun set on the memorial ceremony, ships from across the galaxy began departing. Each carried with them the story of Zephyria. The tale would spread to new worlds, inspiring new generations. The universe was still vast and often cold. Pirates still threatened trade routes. Diseases still struck without warning. Natural disasters still destroyed worlds. But now, when the distress calls went out, they weren't met with silence. Ships came running, not for profit, not for politics, simply because someone needed help, and in a galaxy that had once been ruled. By cold calculation, that made all the difference. The humans had started it. But now it belonged to everyone. After all, they were all human now.